Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. It's Friday and that means it's countdown day. And what's the topic this week? The most crazy, the most insane, the most out of their mind lunatics in the Transformers universe. That's going to be our topic in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, light them up, baby. And hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton. It lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, the Autobot Family, Transformers vs. DC Universe vs. Marvel. No. Transformers vs. G.I. Joe vs. DC Universe vs. Marvel. All my social media links, they're all down in the description below. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, there's a donate link in the description. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we offer to you through Teespring. Or, of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. And this week's topic was the most crazy, the most insane, the most lunatic, out-of-their-mind characters in the Transformers universe. And it was really interesting voting. There was a lot of it for various reasons. Sometimes it was because a character is, you know, kind of like hyper psychotic or violent. Sometimes it's because they have a god complex. Sometimes it's just because they're a daredevil who's just plain nuts. Either way, there were a lot of votes for a lot of characters. Let's jump into the honorable mentions first. And the honorable mentions include, this time around, Thunderwing. And I thought Thunderwing made a great push. I thought he was going to get more. I thought he was going to make the list. And I get it. I totally understand why Thunderwing would be included. But he only made the honorable mentions. As did Red Alert. I totally understand why Red Alert would as well, with his rampant paranoia. We also had Tarn. Tarn would have been a great one to make the list, but only enough votes for the honorable mentions. Beast Wars Megatron, especially the Beast Machines chapter of him with his definite god complex. And last but not least, Shockwave. Shockwave, both brilliant and crazy because of his absolute low moral code, as he bows specifically and only to logic. So if all of them are the honorable mentions, who actually made the list? Well, let's kick things off, as we always do, with number 10 first. And number 10 takes us to the world of the Beast Wars, and one of the Transmetals characters. One that has a very dark history of extinguishing many sparks. Too many to name. One that specifically feeds on fear. Talking, of course, about Rampage, or Protoform X if you are so inclined. Look, Rampage is definitely out of his mind. Not only because he feeds on fear, but if you know the backstory for the character, there's so much unbridled violence that he takes pleasure in, that how could he be seen as anything else than crazy? And for that reason he takes the number 10 slot. Now number 9 sticks with Beast Wars, and this character identifies more with his insect-like form, alternate form, than he does with his actual teammates. So much so that he has certain intricacies, eccentricities, if you will, to his personality that he just can't seem to get past. I'm talking, of course, about Beast Wars Inferno, who really identifies more as an ant than he does anything else. And for some reason cannot seem to get past the notion of calling Megatron his queen and assuming that everything he does is for the royalty. Is it that he's hiding brilliance, or is it that his mind is just that much insane that he actually sees himself as a legitimate ant first and foremost above anything else? If the latter is true, then it absolutely justifies why this guy would take the number 9 slot. Now number 8 is a perfect example of why I don't accept, generally speaking anyway, teams. I want specific character names, because number 8 is Wild Rider. Not all of the Stunticons, but Wild Rider. He specifically got a bunch of votes because he has this like Devil May Cry sort of attitude. He doesn't care. He lives for the thrill, he lives for the moment, and he lives to bust up Autobots. It's all he cares about. It's all that appeals to him. He's the epitome of an adrenaline junkie, even putting himself at risk. And he doesn't care. And for that reason, he gained enough votes to solidify himself at the number 8 slot. Now, number 7 was one that sort of confused me until I heard the justifications for it. I'm talking about this guy. It's Starscream. And some different iterations of Starscream were bandied about, but all of them shared the same sort of justification. That Starscream's lust for power blinds him to everything else, and that he grabs for it at the ever so slightest of a chance, even though he has no idea what to do with it. More often than not, it's his grasp of, or I guess attempts to grasp power, and them not succeeding that kind of puts this guy in the realm of being out of his mind. You see, the definition of being psychotic is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Starscream always tries to gain power, grab power from Megatron, and he never succeeds, really. It's always the same results. Maybe you should just stop trying. And the one time that he did really succeed and gain power, he didn't know what to do with it. Is it just that his aspirations are bigger than his abilities, or is it that he's out of his mind? Well, if you believe the votes, it's because he's out of his mind. For that reason, he takes the number 7 slot. Unlike the ambiguity of Starscream being labeled as crazy, it's without a doubt that number 6 is crazy, because the guy's a cannibal, the guy is a scientist, and the guy is, much like Shockwave, a scientist with really no moral code at all. I'm talking about Tarantulas. That's right, we're into Beast Wars again, and man, the Predacons are a crazy bunch of lads, aren't they? I really thought that Tarantulas was going to be on the list. I even thought he would be higher on the list. I mean, it's known that he's a cannibal. It's known that his experimentation and his aspirations follow no moral code other than what Tarantulas wants to do, Tarantulas does. It's really as simple as that. Because of his kind of lack of any sense of conscience, and because of the fact that the dude is a cannibal, he solidifies himself at the number 6 slot. And right here at the halfway mark, once again, we have a very, very fitting character. Whirl. He is arguably out of his mind, but I don't think many would argue with it. You know, you want to talk about that devil-may-care attitude. You want to talk about living for the moment, living for the adventure, and kind of doing it in a fashion where, you know, you don't think beyond the actions you're doing. You don't think about the consequences. You just do things. That's Whirl. I always kind of see him as like the Autobots' answer to like a Deadpool type of character. Like, he's obviously not in his right mindset, but he just does stuff that's entertaining, that's fun, and that's wild and crazy. It's the, you know, it's the kind of the thrill seeker who doesn't think about the consequences, who just does things because he wants the thrill, because he lives in the moment. All of those things combined, each of those things alone is fine. All of those things combined, well, kind of leads to Whirl. And many would agree that even as far as the Wreckers go, this guy is out of his mind, but in an entertaining way. And for that reason, he takes the number 5 slot. Now, number 4, I don't really get so much. I guess I do, sort of. It's Wreck-Gar. Now, some voted for G1 Wreck-Gar. Some voted for animated Wreck-Gar. Some said that in the G1 version, he's out of his mind because of his weird speech patterns. You know, it might just be weird speech patterns. It might have nothing to do with his level of intellect or being out of his mind, because he was also on last week's list for dumbest Transformers. I don't so much see him as crazy. He has this kind of sea of brilliance indeed. I don't know if he really thinks things through, or again, if he just sort of cobbles stuff together. The animated version arguably does a lot of wild things, probably because of his somewhat diminished intellectual capacity, but he does so again without really thinking it through, without thinking of any of the consequences. If I was to err on any side of Wreck-Gar to be included on this list of crazy, it would definitely be the animated version. But crazy is what makes him fun. Any way you cut it, whether it's the G1 or whether it's the animated, Wreck-Gar solidified himself with enough votes at the number 4 slot, and that only leaves us with 3. And number 3 is one that I knew, that I think everybody would know would appear on this list. It's Blitzwing. wait, it's not this Blitzwing. It's the animated Blitzwing. It's the animated iteration of Blitzwing. We all know that the guy has like dissociative personality disorder, or commonly, layman's terms, multiple personalities because of his whole kind of head rotating gimmick. Or some people say that much like Quintessence, it's just different sides of his personality. I tend to think that each one is their own personality, and because of kind of how outlandish, especially like the not the one with the monocle, but like the crazy face is, and there is one that I think is noted as being like the crazy face. How could the guy not make the list? Because of his multiple personalities, and because of specifically the crazy face, he was easily able to solidify himself at the number 3 slot. Number 2 will probably come as no surprise to many people as well. This guy is definitely one of the most evil characters, there's no doubt about it. And even in my own Universal Collision, he has a certain foreboding to him. If we look at his G1 iteration, well, it's not so much that he's crazy, but one of his most popularized iterations is definitely from IDW, where the dude actually rooted out his own eye. I'm talking about Overlord. If you know his kind of personality, especially in the comics, the guy's out of his mind. He's a lunatic. He is a violent, dangerous lunatic. And honestly, there are episodes in G1 where the same could be argued. There's points throughout the Prime Wars trilogy where the same thing could be argued. I tend to think of this guy as like the living embodiment of violence, and that he takes great glee and pleasure in destroying. And I think we can agree that most folks, even most Transformers, don't take quite that level of glee in chaos, annihilation, and devastation. And for that reason, for his passions, he takes the number 2 slot. And finally, we come to number 1. And number 1 this week was by and far the one that got the most votes. Not quite as much as Dinobot got for most heroic, but pretty much on par with Wheelie for most annoying. So who is the craziest, the most lunatic-like, the most out of his mind Transformers character? Well, it gotta be the guy who took a lava bath. I'm talking about Galvatron. We all know that Galvatron is a lunatic. We all know that the lava damaged his brain, as, you know, lava usually does. Right. I don't think lava's good for you. And then he gets mad when his lava bath was interrupted by, I think it was Cyclonus and Scourge. He went for therapy on a planet, the Web World episode, I think. He went for therapy on a planet, and they couldn't help him. In fact, not only could they not help him, but he literally drove a planet insane. If you have the power to drive a planet insane and then take pride in doing so because nobody can stop Galvatron, you gotta be the craziest of all the Transformers. And yet he led the Decepticons. Go figure. Without anybody threatening his position at the top, he far and away wildly took enough votes to come in at number 1. And there we go. Once again, we've gone from 10 down to 1. And now you guys know who the craziest Transformers characters are. Some of them probably a little questionable. And we did have other votes for other characters throughout here. And it was really interesting. Like, we had votes roll in for, as I look here, Blur, for Straxus, who I thought was a great one. For Unicron himself, arguably. For, who else got some votes here? G1 Megatron, because, again, much like Starscream, he comes up with all these plans. He thinks he's going to win, and he never does. Wheelie got a couple of votes, which I think was explained in the comics that apparently, like, he started the rhyming to entertain himself, and he's sort of now, his mind is like trapped in the rhyming, which could be a measure of insanity. Insecticon Barrage got some votes, as did Pharma. There you go. So, that's it. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you if you're in a position to help the channel to grow. Don't forget, there's a donate link in the description. You can check us out on Patreon, see what we offer to you through Teespring, or, of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. Don't forget, somehow, someway, each and every single day, man, you do make a difference. And I look forward, baby, to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights, at the stop motion premieres of the old fashioned way, right here inside the videos.